Hi guys, welcome. Who dat? I'm Joe, and I am here to bring you a breakdown of the Saints' first preseason action. Our beloved Bless You Boys in black and gold hosted the world champion Kansas City Chiefs in the Caesars Superdome, and the Saints come away with the victory 26-24. Something we can all agree on: the starting unit for the Saints, both offensively and defensively, looked great up against the starters from the champs. And the Saints did their thing. We score in the first drive with all of our starters, marched down the field, looked great. Starting defense goes out there, holds Kansas City. They went for it on fourth down and couldn't convert. Then a mix of starters and second stringers went out there, marched down the field, got a score again. The mix of first and second stringers go out there on defense, and we forced KC to punt. When it was all said and done, by the time all the second stringers were out there, the Saints had themselves a 17-0 lead. And then things started to fall apart in the second and third quarter. After taking that 17-0 lead, the Saints end up giving up 21 points between the second and third quarter. That was hard to deal with. They had a field goal in the fourth quarter, and the Saints had to play catch up. It was 24-17. Jake Hayner and company finally got things going. We score a touchdown. We go for the 2-point conversion. It fails. But we managed to get the ball back and kick a game-winning field goal. Blake Groupie, of all things. So game started out great, ended great. We come away with the win. A win's great, no matter whether it's preseason or not. A win is great during a joint practice. That's the way I feel. I also feel great about the starting unit. We looked great, and you don't get much better competition than the world champs. So overall, a lot of good things to take from this. Now, here on this channel at Rosenfield 10, it's easier for me to post videos on Tuesdays and then on Thursdays. So sometimes my reactions will come out a few days after the fact. If you're a Saints fan and you love the Bless You Boys in black and gold, you'll be looking for content. And hopefully, if I don't get something out post-game on Sunday night or Monday, you'll find it on Tuesday, and then my preview for the next contest will come out on Thursdays usually, and that's pretty early. So subscribe if you like what I'm putting down. Let's pull up the stats and see how this went down. Derek Carr and the starting unit, what else can you say? It looked like the Saints of old. Efficient, got the job done. 12-play, 85-yard drive to start the game. Derek Carr, 6 of 8 for 70 yards and a touchdown. Spread the ball around. Looked decisive. Looked like he knew exactly where everybody was supposed to be. He looked comfortable in the pocket. Probably the most impressive thing to me about the starters, besides Derek Carr, was the performance of the offensive line. Trevor Penning, James Hurst, Eric McCoy, Cesar Ruiz, Ryan Ramczyk. They did great. I watched that drive several times, and that was the most impressive thing to me. Besides a false start penalty, there were no hiccups, and it was beautiful. After that, Jameis came in, and we started substituting in players. Jameis looked pretty good at first, taking a team down the field and scoring a touchdown. He finishes 11 of 13 for 92 yards and a touchdown. Overall, Jameis did okay. I still think he holds on to the ball too long, and I don't know. He's got such a talented arm that he can take a half a second longer to dissect, and then he can make the throw happen. He can fit the throw. But when that offensive line, started to get into the second teamers and third teamers, Jameis looked a little nervous back there. And then when Jake Haener came in, he was I felt like suffering this through the same thing, except Haener kind of hung in there in the pocket. He had pressure just like Jameis, but he wasn't running around. He was trying to get the ball to the right player. And a lot of people say Haener looked like, he was struggling as far as mentally, as far as whether the pressure was getting to him, etc. And then after he got comfortable, he started to turn things around. I think he looked fine. His throws weren't the best at first. He finishes 10 of 17 for 105 yards, 1 touchdown and 1 interception. The touchdown was great. It got us to within a point, and I liked the throws he was making. During the broadcast, Drew Brees was being interviewed by the commentators during a lot of Haener's performance out there. Brees was able to recognize how Haener looked good, even though the outcome wasn't great the entire time. And I kind of felt the same way. I was looking at a lot of the rookies in this past weekend of preseason action, and I felt bad for a lot of them. A lot of them looked way more confused than Haener. A lot of them looked like they wanted to take off running because most of them were playing behind backup offensive linemen. That's the thing about this. The second and third stringers come in, and you kind of really don't know what you have. Jameis Winston was a completely different quarterback when the offensive linemen started leaving the game. And, like I say, you put Winston out there or Haener out there with the starting unit, and, I liked what Haener put down this weekend. And that is something that just about everybody else covering the Saints is not saying. They're saying Haener struggled. He put it together toward the end, but it didn't look like he's been looking in camp. Everyone's been very impressed in camp, and they think that going 10 out of 17 for 105 yards, a touchdown, interception is bad output for him. I haven't been watching him in camp. I'm comparing Jake Haener to every other potential third-string quarterback that the Saints have had recently, for sure. And Haener blows all of them out of the water. I watched Ian Book with the Eagles this preseason. Trust me, if you think Jake Haener struggled, just go watch all the other rookies this past weekend. And I'm not these guys that are watching Haener every day in practice. And, a lot of them were so excited about him that they just wanted to temper it. And then he goes out there and looks, I guess, average, and they think it's a bad performance. 10 of 17 for 105 yards and a potential game-tying touchdown isn't bad to me. It's pretty good. The way he hung in the pocket, the way he was going through his progressions, the choices he actually made with the ball, I think overall was pretty good. The interception seemed like it was going to be a back shoulder to wide receiver Washington, and Washington didn't even know the ball was coming. I guess the coverage was too good. Haener shouldn't have taken that chance. If the receiver knew the ball was coming, it would have definitely been a contested catch. And the cornerback for KC made a great play. But other than that, I was excited. I was excited to see Jameis play as well as he did for the first half of his action. So, good job overall in the passing game. The running attack, Jamal Williams finishes 9 carries, 28 yards, 3.1 average. Ellis Merriweather, 9 carries, 24 yards. That's a 2.7 average. Alvin Kamara was in mid-season form. 3 carries, 14 yards. That's a 4.7 yard average. Kamara also had 2 catches. And that screen pass should have been a touchdown if he would have cut it back up the middle, and we can all see it from the bird's eye view. I mean, he had blockers out there, and those blockers did not miss their assignments, and Kamara would have walked in. But it's preseason. He's hugging the sideline, probably for good reason. But the starters were impressive. Jameis Winston also scrambled twice for 14 yards. He needs to learn how to slide. Jake Hayner scrambled once for 8 yards. And Kendre Miller had 4 carries for only 5 yards. He ends up spraining his knee in the game and had to leave. And Merriweather was counted on after that. And he came through for us, scoring the potential game-tying touchdown. Receiving, A.T. Perry, 6th-round draft pick, blowing everyone out of the water with 6 targets, 6 catches, 70 yards, and a great touchdown. Exact opposite of what we've been seeing in OTAs and minicamp. A.T. Perry has struggled with catching the ball in camp. And he dropped to the 6th round in the draft. He was probably a 3rd-round projection. People didn't understand why. Perry alluded to perhaps people thought he had a bad attitude. And I guess he's just a quiet guy. Doesn't come across as a happy person. I don't know. And he had a lot of drops in college. When you're targeted 125 times, you'll probably drop 8 or 9 of them. So I didn't have an issue with what he did in college. But once the lights came on in the preseason game, he caught everything thrown his way. Player of the game, of course, A.T. Perry. Brian Edwards had 3 catches for 37 yards. Quan Baker had 2 catches for 30 yards. Juwan Johnson with the starters had 2 catches for 29 yards, both of them first downs. Converting 3rd downs, Juwan Johnson, the combination of Derek Carr and Juwan Johnson looks very promising. Kamara had 2 catches during that first drive as well, so I love seeing Derek Carr utilize the tight ends and the running backs. Excellent. Shaq Davis had 2 catches for 20 yards. Ellis Merriweather had 2 catches for 17 yards and that touchdown. Michael Thomas got in the action with 1 catch for 16 yards. Jimmy Graham had 1 catch for 10 yards, and the crowd loved it. And finally, Keith Kirkwood, who only had 1 catch, but it was the 4-yard touchdown for the starters. It was the last read for Carr. He had all day to throw the ball because of that great offensive line. As long as the starters on the offensive line are out there, I think we're going to do pretty good on offense. Derek Carr seems to know this offense very well. He's played in it before, and he looked very comfortable. I mean, Derek Carr does this all season long, and he'll be in that conversation for top 10 quarterbacks in the league. As it is right now, he's kind of floating around 13, 14. Saints look like we're on the right track. Now, the depth is something we need to work on. That's what preseason's for. We're working out the kinks. I'm also going to talk about the defense for a second here. Anthony Orji had 3 total tackles. Ryan Connolly, linebacker, 2 tackles, 2 assists. Linebacker Ty Summers, 2 tackles and a sack. Linebacker Zach Vaughn, 2 tackles, an assist, and a sack. Vaughn looked great as an on linebacker, attacking the run and the quarterback. We tried him off the ball, and he struggled. And that's the thing with Vaughn. If we're going to go with 3 linebackers and Vaughn's out there, especially against a team like Tennessee who likes to run the ball, you might see a lot more 3 linebacker formations on the Saints defense. And Vaughn's like a one-trick pony. When he's out there, if he's asked to cover, advantage offense. But if we can mix and match our coverages and Bowen can rush the quarterback, he might do pretty good. I'm also going to point out Ugo Amadi, who had a tackle and had an interception off of a great pass deflection by Alontae Taylor. And Kyle Phillips, who finished with one tackle and that interception, which basically won the game for the Saints because it put us in field goal range. No team would have thrown in that situation. It's preseason. Kansas City did. Kyle Phillips made an incredible play. He was out there for a good portion of the fourth quarter and didn't make a lot of noise until that play. So I will say the defensive players of the game, got to go with the entire starting unit. They looked fantastic. We had no Demario Davis in the middle, so Nephi Sewell was out there. Right now, he's vying for that backup middle linebacker spot along with DeMarco Jackson. And we've also signed Jalen Smith, and he'll probably see some action in the second game. And that's potentially a spot for Smith to play as well. Jalen Smith might be able to play all three spots, but he'll definitely be backing up the Will and the Mike. But got to give the hats off to Nephi. I'm also going to mention, of course, safety Ugo Amadi, who's been playing a lot at the nickel. And he gets the interception. And Kyle Phillips, who also has the interception. We only had 7 interceptions all year last year, so to get 2 in one game, even though it's preseason, it looks like the Saints are trying to turn a corner with that. Linebacker Zach Bowen, of course, you're going to get a lot of play. This is the only time Bowen shines is in preseason. He gets to play a lot, and he's struggling in coverage, but I'm still going to give him kudos for having tackles and sack. Hey, Ty Summers as well, looking good on special teams. And Summers is one of those guys that can play along the linebacking core, any spot. And Ryan Connolly, linebacker as well, who looked good on special teams and in spot duty. Summers and Connolly have been with the team since last year in backup roles. We eventually acquired both of them. And, we're going to need this linebacker depth to step up, and I'm highlighting them here. None of them were very good in coverage. So that's an issue. But against the run, we looked great, and on special teams, we looked pretty solid as far as the coverage unit goes. On offense, the offensive players of the game, of course, the entire starting unit, especially Derek Carr and that offensive line, and Alvin Kamara. Get all that going, plus Chris Olave running around, Rashid Shaheed coming back, Michael Thomas, Juwan Johnson. Foster Moreau didn't even get involved. Good job, starters. A.T. Perry, wide receiver, player of the game. 6 targets, 6 catches. You got to love it. Ellis Merriweather, who might not have seen much action had Kendre Miller not gotten injured. Ellis Merriweather finishes with a great game. He'll probably remain on the team. We just signed Darrell Williams at running back. So when it's all said and done, once Kirk Merritt comes back from his injury, there's a chance that Merriweather ends up on the practice squad. But kudos for this game. And yes, quarterback Jake Haener. I'm going to put it down here. I'm not comparing him in this game to what he did all camp. I'm looking at what the rookie quarterback went out there and did with all those backups and how he performed. And he looks light years ahead of most of the rookies and young quarterbacks that I watched this preseason, this first weekend of preseason. That was my biggest takeaway, was that these young quarterbacks looked completely overwhelmed. They were doing things that I don't think a good quarterback would do. Running with the ball too early, not going through the progressions, worrying about the rush coming instead of focusing on what's happening down the field. They all struggled. And when they made throws, a lot of them were just awful. A lot of the interceptions I saw from these rookies were overthrows that were intercepted by safeties. And, you know, Hayner had an interception. It looked like a back shoulder throw. That was a miscommunication between him and the receiver, and it was a great play by the DB. And yeah, when I see a rookie throw that kind of interception, I'm like, oh, well, they need to get on the same page. It's not like Hayner didn't know the route was there. Somebody messed up, but I mean, I loved his moxie in the pocket. I love that he was going through his progressions and not looking nervous to me. And that's what a lot of people said about Hayner, is that he looked off. And it's like, okay, I have never seen him play in a Saints jersey before. And like I say, compared to everybody else the Saints have had at the third string quarterback, I mean, I watched Trevor Siemian. I watched Trevor Siemian this weekend. Don't tell me Jake Hayner had a bad game this weekend after watching Trevor Siemian. Is that who you want? Is that the performance you want? C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, they looked bad. The only one that's been looking good is Dorian Thompson-Robinson. He's been looking great. I thought Will Levis, whatever, I thought he was okay. And that backup for Kansas City looked pretty good, too. There's been some good play. I mean, come on. I'm not one to crap on Jake Hayner for that performance. Matter of fact, I got him here as one of the players of the game. The way he was able to turn it around and get the win for us. Good job, Jake. All right, guys. The biggest issue I had was the penalties, of course. KC had 7 for 61 yards. We had 9 penalties for 79 yards. Holding and that false start by Penning. But, you know, you expect those things. Last year, the Saints had 10 penalties a game in preseason, and a lot of the regular season, we had way too many penalties. That was my biggest issue. The kicking game for the Saints, Will Lutz had 1 attempt, and he was successful, 36-yarder. And then, of course, Blake Grupe goes out there to kick the game winner, 31-yarder. As far as punting goes, man, Blake Gillikin, you got to do something, man. The first punt of the game, the Saints scored 3 straight drives, and when we finally have to punt, Gillikin goes out there and shanks it. It goes for like 25 yards, 24 yards. Gives KC possession at the 50-yard line, and that's when they got their first score. You know, that's the kind of stuff Gillikin is supposed to be avoiding. I don't know, maybe he was trying one of those helicopter kicks. Anyway, not a good look for Gillikin. He eventually finishes with 3 punts for 114 yards. One was downed in the 20, and that was a beautiful punt. So for the shank, the awfulness of the shank, you had the beauty of the one that was downed by Quan Baker inside the 20. So Gillikin ends up with an average of 38 yards a punt. And his competition, Lou Hedley, looks pretty good. 4 punts, 158 yards. That's an average of 39.5. So overall, I got to say Hedley has this one for this game. He wins the punting competition in this one. Gillikin needs to avoid those shanks because that one that was down inside of 20, it doesn't get any better than that. So, jury's still out. And, of course, our kick returner and punt returner, Rashid Shaheed, he wasn't available. So we gave a newly signed John Trey Kirkland, former LSU quarterback, wide receiver, running back. We gave him the shot, and he had 3 kick returns for 72 yards. That's an average of 24 a return. So pretty good for Kirkland. He's a long shot to make this team at wide receiver. We also gave Bowden Jr. the punt return duties. He had 1 kick return for 20 yards. He had 2 punt returns for 30 yards. And Kendre Miller, he's the one that returned that first kick. It was to open the game. It was a short kick, and Kendre was an up back, and he returned that for 16 yards. So yeah, Kirk Merritt, who has a hamstring issue right now. He was a wide receiver. We put him at running back. It would be nice to get him back in the next couple of games, because we could use the extra back since Kendre Miller is going to be out the rest of the preseason. We could use an extra back there. We signed Darrell Williams. We have Jamal Williams. And we have Ellis Merriweather. So if Kirk Merritt comes back and can play, he also returns kicks and punts. We don't expect to see wide receiver Rashid Shaheed until the season starts. I do have my updated depth charts, which have included all of the moves that have happened. I mean, Trey Turner gets hurt right out of the gate, and we end up signing a bunch of players and making a bunch of moves. We got rid of Coda Martin. We ended up re-signing him, and now he's injured again, and we end up waiving him again. Like I said, we signed Darrell Williams at running back, but we need to release a player, and we haven't done that yet as of this video. So I'm not posting the current depth chart, until I find out who we're getting rid of. I'm focusing on tight end here, actually. We just signed J.P. Holtz, who was on the team last year, who was a good blocker. So I'm thinking we're going to release Jesse James at tight end. So we'll see. I might do another video this week. I'm not going to do previews for these preseason games, but I will do the reaction and give you the updated depth chart. So maybe this Thursday I'll post the updated depth chart once that move is made, because we need to release somebody. I'm looking at Jesse James. That's my guess. All right, that's it. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. I'm Joe. Subscribe to Rosenville 10 for more Saints videos, and I'll talk to you later.